Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Danny Garcia confirms he'll eventually go to 154 for more gold. I am 100% ready to be a world champion again. I've worked hard, I'm motivated, and anything Porter brings will not work. I don't know if my next fight will be in another weight class, but I definitely have that in the plans to go up and win more titles, said Garcia. Garcia was back in action in February and got his career back on track when he pulled off a vicious knockout of Brandon Rios in Las Vegas. For that fight, I was super prepared and the people were the witness. On the night of September 8th, we will have to see if Porter can resist. We will see which one of the two has more desire to win. I'll always push myself to the limits and I'll be ready for Porter. The strong puncher acknowledged that beating Porter would place him again in the front row of the boxing circles. I'm focused on being a 4-time world champion. That is my goal, and at the end of the day, I will achieve it, he said. Garcia versus Porter will headline a live broadcast on Showtime starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, for those of you that heard, just heard what Danny Garcia had to say in this article, I'm pretty sure that there was one thing he said that stood out more than anything else. And it's that who knows if he'll be fighting in a different division in his next fight. That's what we're here to talk about, right? We're here to talk about the prospect of Danny Garcia moving up to 154 and when exactly would that happen. So I'm gonna put it this way. If Danny Garcia
wins this weekend
were to beat Sean Porter on Saturday and then decide that after that he wants to go to 54, instead of staying in one of the hottest divisions in boxing, where there are plenty of good mega fights. You got Terrence Crawford right there, who you were talking shit to, and now you're in the same weight class. But instead of staying there, you're hinting at a move to 154. You have Errol Spence, his stablemate, a guy who is on his side of the street,
tell it like it is,
holding a world title.
Walk away from there, okay?
But you're talking about a move to 154 instead of a unification fight. You gotta understand, people don't say shit for no reason. If he's saying this shit, it's because something that is something that was discussed. It was something that was talked about. And I'm gonna be completely honest. No, I don't like the idea of Danny Garcia moving to 54 after this fight. I don't like the idea of that.
Sorry.
There are so many good fights at 147. So many good fights that haven't even happened yet. I mean, this fight between him and Sean, it's a good fight. But this isn't even the main course. People have been waiting for the longest time to see all these different guys collide. And if Danny Garcia were to win on Saturday and then go to 54, well, there goes all of that shit. And then you think about the prospect of Danny Garcia at 154. Let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about that. Let's reshift the focus.
Listening.
You know, depending on how Danny Garcia performs this Saturday against Sean Porter,
It's important.
that gives us an insight. That gives us a window into what he can and can't do at 154 pounds. You don't go life and death with Sean Porter and then move up there to where the guys are bigger, they've got better punch resistance, and they're bigger punchers. Physically, they're bigger guys. You don't go from going life or death with Sean Porter into that realm,
sir.
that arena, because it's going to be that much harder to win once you get up there. You have to ask yourself a question. Who holding a title at junior middleweight right now would you give Danny Garcia any kind of odds to beat? Do you think he could beat Jermell Charlo?
No.
Do you think he could beat big ass fucking Jarrett Hurd
No.
or big ass fucking Jaime Munguia?
No.
Even in some of these fights, Danny might have a stylistic edge because he's a boxer puncher, and some of these guys happen to be pressure fighters. In that stylistic matchup, the boxer puncher might have an edge. But physically, he won't have an edge. And we already saw that play out not too long ago against Saddam Ali and Jaime Munguia. That Saddam had the right style for the job, but not the right kind of size. So imagine Danny Garcia in a situation like that with those guys that are up there. And let's take the champions out of the equation. What kind of odds do you give Danny Garcia to beat Kanat Islam? For those of you who don't know who that is, you better get a look, okay? I mean, essentially, the most winnable fight for Danny Garcia would be against another welterweight that moved up. And that's Kell Brook. Even that fight is a close fight because Kell Brook just so happens to be a very good boxer. But relatively speaking, that would be the most winnable fight.
Still close.
Whereas at 147, pick somebody. Pick anybody. It's a good fight for Danny. It's a winnable fight for Danny. And he's not gonna be, the small fry in all of those situations. But you go to 154, well, you're the small fry in most of those situations. So the idea of Danny Garcia going to 54, especially after this fight, I'm not even sure that's a good fucking idea, but we'll see. Maybe their intention is to go to 54 and take lighter touches until a winnable title becomes available. It could be that way. They might have another year-long hiatus in mind. It could be that way. Allow the division to thin itself out and then step in once it has thinned itself out. It could be that way. But like I said, with the guys that are holding belts up there right now, I don't give Danny Garcia very good odds to beat those guys. I don't. So, this weekend's fight, it's going to be quite an insight because Shawn Porter is a lot of things. But what he mostly is a very, very physical guy. His conditioning is top tier. His punch resistance is top tier, okay? This is serious fucking business. And I don't think that this is going to be an easy fight for Danny Garcia. I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park. I don't think this is going to be a walk in the park because of how physical Shawn Porter is. Understand that Shawn Porter is not a finesse fighter. The threat of Shawn Porter is a physical threat. And with physicality playing such a big role in this fight, and then tacking on the physicality associated with junior middleweights, which Danny Garcia intends to fight at some point, this weekend's fight will lend insight into the future. That you can't just go life or death with Shawn Porter and then run up the junior middleweight and fight bigger guys than him. That doesn't even make any fucking sense. Very curious choice of words from Danny Garcia. But back to my original point. Leaving 147 pounds right now to go up there to junior middleweight, I'll just speak for myself when I say that, I wouldn't like that move. The division's on fire. It's a stacked division. You got any variety of good fights in every direction. Pick one. Why go, if you become the WBC champion again, why go up to 54 now? You got Errol Spence right there. What are you trying to get away from that guy or something? You were talking shit to Terrence Crawford, what was it, last year or something like that? About the whole thing in the amateurs? You guys got no shortage of words when it comes to Terrence Crawford. So now that he's in your division, you're talking about going to 54? Now, I'm not trying to blow this thing out of proportion. It could have been a passing thought on Danny Garcia's mind. It could have been. But like I said, people don't say shit for no fucking reason. So if they're talking about 54, it's because they were talking about 54 at some point. That is possible that after the fight, he goes to 54. That's why I'm saying that. He didn't say the shit for no reason. And I personally think that would be a whack fucking move. I'm a straight talking. It's a whack fucking move. You got Spence right there. Thurman's gonna come back. Don't you want a rematch with that guy? Terrence Crawford's here. Amir Khan is right there. There's a lot of shit. There's a lot of different shit. Why go up to 54 now? What are you trying to get away from? I don't know, man. I don't know. But like I said, those are my feelings. Feel free to disagree. But I don't like the idea that Danny Garcia might win on Saturday and then move up to 54. And I'm hoping that it doesn't happen that way. Now, in other news relating to this weekend's fight, the Garcia versus Porter winner has to make 2 mandatory defenses. Suleiman is following the guidelines of the WBC's rules, which direct the winner of a vacant world title to make back-to-back mandatory defenses. And another portion of the article reads, Thurman has the option to fight for the title if he is registered and ready, said Suleiman to ESPN Deportes. And if he is not ready, then he will be one of the mandatory challengers. On the one hand, we have Andre Berto. On the other hand, the winner of the fight between Yordenis Ugas and Cesar Barrionuevo. Now, before you guys get your panties in a bunch over the latest jackass mandate from the WBC, do realize that the WBC doesn't always follow through on this shit. Ask yourself a question. Danny Garcia fought for the vacant WBC title before, remember?
Against Guerrero.
He's been here before. But after he won it, did he make 2 mandatory title defenses after that? No, he didn't. And the WBC, they don't exactly have the best follow-through. They're not like the IBF.
Hell no.
Where you know that there's going to be a penalty if you don't comply. The WBC doesn't have the best follow-through because consider this. They already ordered Danny and Shawn to fight well over a year ago. Well over. But they're just now fighting. They ordered Danny and Shawn to fight sometime in July or August of last year, and the fight didn't come off. What was the penalty for that? Nothing, because here they are, fighting for a fucking title, a full year later, well over a year. The WBC doesn't have the best follow-through, so when I hear them say that the winner has to satisfy 2 mandatories, I'm not even worried about that shit. And the third reason that, I'm really not worried about this news from the WBC, as stupid as it is, because I do think it's stupid, but as stupid as this news is, the winner of this fight does have the option to unify a title with either Errol Spence or Terrence Crawford or Keith Thurman when he comes back, because he still is the WBA champion. So if it is Keith, and that it's kind of like it's like kind of like killing two birds with one stone, because they did mention Keith as a potential opponent, but he also happens to be the WBA champion, and that could circumvent a mandatory, in a manner of speaking. So there is that the winner of this fight, they do have the option to unify titles. So that's another way to get around, this whole mandatory whatever. It's just a lot of bullshit. But it's a curious situation, because the WBC really does pick and choose when they want to act like a sanctioning body. You understand? They pick and choose the moments where they decide to put their foot down or they decide to mandate something. I mean, think about it. They told Dylan White that he's not the mandatory and that Dominic Breazeale is the mandatory, but they haven't ordered that fight yet.
No, they haven't.
Perhaps they don't intend to, because it hasn't been a year since Wilder satisfied his last mandatory. I'm aware of that, that it really hasn't been a year. But at the same time, why put Breazeale ahead of White? That doesn't even make sense. Dylan White was ranked higher than Breazeale, but once again, that's the magic and the mystery of the WBC. Hard at work to confuse the shit out of boxing fans. You remember back when the WBC said that they were going to investigate, why is it that Adonis Stevenson hasn't satisfied a mandatory in such a long time? You remember that shit? What happened to that investigation?
Nothing.
What happened?
Nothing.
I'll tell you what the fuck happened. Not a goddamn thing. That's what happened. So when I see the WBC, saying that, the winner's got two mandatories, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I'm not too worried about it. I don't have too much stock in it because, like I said, they can participate in a unification fight and circumvent the mandatory, and I'm pretty sure that the WBC would allow it because there's more money in a unification fight, especially now that you've got all these pretty big names in that division. You're not gonna get in the way of a Errol Spence fight or a Terrence Crawford fight or a Keith Thurman fight so that Danny Garcia can fight Yordenis Ugas or Andre Berto. Are you fucking serious? So, like I said, I'm not worried about it right now. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. We'll see what develops. Now, in even more idiotic news associated with the WBC may create a rule that blocks a parent from working their son's corner. A highlighted portion of the article reads, "The days of a father running the corner of his son during boxing matches could very well be numbered, at least according to the World Boxing Council, which is currently scrutinizing the parental role." Another highlighted portion reads, "The WBC has concerns over a potential mental conflict where a fighter will continue to push himself even with their health at risk because their parent is in the corner."
But their health is still at risk whether their parent is in the corner or not. So what?
WBC President Mauricio Suleiman said, "We believe there is a natural obstacle and we are evaluating what is happening. There is a situation which mixes emotions and it's our experience that it's not recommendable to have fathers in the corner. Having said that, there are many fighters today who are working with a parent for a long time, so we are carefully looking into it. You are much more demanding of your son for school grades and in any sport, and the son has much more pride in the presence of his father, so he doesn't give up as dad is right there." This has got to be one of the more moronic pieces of news that have come from the WBC. Now this, believe it or not, this is not the first mention that the WBC has made of this. This isn't. A New York Times or it was either the New York Times or the Daily News. It was one of them. I'll post the article up here for you guys to see it. Back in 2009, they mentioned this same shit, that they want to end father and son duos or something like that. And this is what I've got to say. If your whole argument is that you feel that the fighters are at risk because their fathers are in the corner, take their fathers out of the corner. Aren't the fighters still at risk?
Yes, sir.
I mean, essentially the difference between the father being in the corner and the father not being in the corner, what it seems to be is that the father is giving their son that extra push, that extra nudge that allows him to excel, that he will go above and beyond because he has the moral support of his parent right there in the corner. And for some fucking reason, the WBC thinks this is a bad thing.
You retarded?
Now, I understand what they're saying, that based on some data that they collected, it seems that there's a correlation. But you will find that there are plenty of fighters that are out there that got injured and their dad wasn't in the corner. So what's your point? These guys, this is the hurt business. It's an occupational hazard. Whether your father is there or not, there's gonna be another guy in the ring that's trying to punch you in the face. But the fact that your moral support is so strong, like we see in Kenny Porter and Sean Porter, like we see in Danny Garcia and Angel Garcia. These are two guys who have been world champions, and I believe that their fathers had something to do with that by pushing their sons to be the best fighters that they can be. And for some reason, the WBC thinks this is a bad thing. I don't know what the fuck is going on with the WBC. I don't know what the fuck is going on with Mauricio Suleiman. But fathers urging their sons on, especially in this sport, that's fucking normal. Now I reiterate, this isn't the first time that they mentioned this shit. In 2009 they mentioned this shit, but they didn't do nothing. So here in 2018, I'm hoping that it'll be pretty much the same thing. That yeah, you motherfuckers is talking about it, but don't actually try to implement that shit, because if you do, you will be widely criticized as the most moronic sanctioning body in the sport of boxing, and you will only deter father and son duos to seek world titles with other organizations that don't have this stupid fucking rule. WBC wants to ban father and son duos. Okay, let's go over the IBF, because they don't have this dumb fucking rule. Okay, let's go over there to the WBO, because they don't have this dumb fucking rule. And I don't know about the WBA, because they tend to follow suit with things that the WBC does. But I'm not even sure that the WBA would implement something like this. You understand? But all this would really do is compel fighters and fathers and their sons to go seek world titles elsewhere. I don't know what the fuck Mauricio thinks he's doing, but it's fucking stupid. And that's all I got to say about that. Let's hope this is the last we hear of this for a long time, because it's fucking dumb!